Again, welcome to Pharicode on Air. I'm Lauren Jankowski, the marketing specialist here at Pharicode, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. I'm excited to introduce to you your presenters for today. Sherry Sullivan, the Director of Business Process at Pharicode, and Nathan Hahn, the Director of Solution Delivery at Pharicode. Before we get started, we'd like to give you some background information on Pharicode. Pharicode is a certified small business association, women-owned business, and provides cutting-edge technology services, managed services, and staff augmentation to federal, state, and local government organizations. We're proud to have over 270 certifications, partnerships with a variety of technologies, including ServiceNow, Microsoft, and many more. We'll be monitoring the Q&A throughout today's session, so please send in any questions as they arise, and we'll do our best to answer them. As another perk of attending today's webinar, we'll be giving away a $50 Visa gift card. We'll announce the winner at the very end of today's session, so make sure you stay on. Now, we'd like to hand things over to our presenters for today, Sherry and Nate.
Thank you, Lauren. Again, I'm Sherry Sullivan, the Director of Business Process here at Pharicode. Nathan Hahn, would you like to go ahead and go over what we'll be reviewing today?
Sure. My name is Nate Hahn. I work in the delivery side of Pharicode, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So what Sherry and I are going to be talking about are really best practices around some of the critical stages, and we'll talk a little bit about each of the stages in the implementation methodology that we use, but the focus is going to be on the requirement stage, which is part of the prepare/examine, if you're looking at the ServiceNow implementation methodology. So I wanted to frame a little bit about what we're doing there. As we're going through the presentation, we're going to provide some guidance, some anecdotes, some best practices, and we're doing it in the context of a role play. So we actually chose a fictional company called Vandelay Industries, for a couple of reasons. We thought it would make this session a little bit more interesting and pay homage to one of our favorite, comedy shows, Seinfeld. So I don't know if you folks have had a chance to ever watch that during Seinfeld, but it's a great, couple of episodes. So during the actual role play, I'm going to be playing the CIO, and then Sherry is playing the EM/BPC. We really have a focus on the business process side of things because we feel like the requirements gathering is, the most critical phase, because if you don't get the requirements correct, then, the implementation is just not going to go well. And also the old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So the ServiceNow platform itself lends itself to rapid prototyping and so forth. And certainly we leverage a lot of that. But when you have things whiteboarded, diagrammed out, you can really have a good discussion at the conceptual level and catch a lot of, errors early on in the requirements phase. And plus, as you, go through a whiteboarding session or a storyboarding session for the UI UX, you really can confirm with the customer, what the actual as is and to be processes will be. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on, and we're going to start the actual role play. Sherry, you want to take it away?
Yeah, before that, we have a poll for the audience. We're really interested to see, to know what your current job title is. That'll kind of give us a good idea of who's participating, and the level of information that's going to be relevant for you. So you should be able to see a poll now. If you can go ahead and vote. All right. So we'll go ahead and jump right into the role play. All right, so I'm the BPC here at Pharicode, and we won the contract for Vandelay Industries for their PPM implementation with ServiceNow. The project manager and technical consultant, they've conducted the kickoff workshop. So I'm just going to do my research as the BPC so that I can prepare for the implementation workshop for the prepare stage. So just looking here, I can see that Vandelay Industries, they're based out of Australia. They're a $60 million annual revenue company. Their industry is latex, rubber, and synthetic products. For the various work streams for their modernization effort, of course, Vandelay will be handling their internal organizational change management. Of course, Pharicode, we're here to implement their project portfolio management application. We also have Kramer Consulting, who's responsible for the legacy platform and data migration, as well as Initech, who will be handling the data warehouse and analytics side. Our major stakeholders are Jerry Seinfeld, the CEO. With us today, we have the CIO, Nathan Hahn. We worked very closely with George Costanza, the VP of Sales, to win this contract. And then Elaine Bennis and Newman are also key stakeholders. Additional background information on Vandelay Industries. They started off as a small latex wholesale company. They've since become a latex and synthetics fabrication powerhouse. And they're also in the automotive, clothing, and medical manufacturing industries. They're a global supplier with plants around the world. Some of the pain points identified during the sales process is that they're using a lot of spreadsheets as well as Microsoft Project. They're handling a lot of emails back and forth, so there's a lot of manual work that's going on there. Just a recap for the Pharicode project team, we have myself, the business process consultant, or BPC. We have the engagement manager, as well as our technical consultant. As we can see, the in-scope products for this implementation will be idea, demand, and project, as well as project financials. Today's focus for the implementation workshop will be on the idea and demand management processes. As you can see, here's our engagement timeline. We've completed the initiate stage where we had the kickoff for the project. We're now in the prepare stage, and we're looking to close this project out around December. Of course, we will be following ServiceNow's Implementation Methodology, or the SIM, which is made up of the processes, technology, collateral, and assets, and the expertise provided by ServiceNow and their partners. The SIM is made up of 5 stages: initiate, prepare, create, transition, and close. Some of the internal risk that Vandelay has identified and conveyed to us is that they're reactionaries, they're behind the curve and slow to market. They also find that they fund too many duplicate projects, as well as many projects with a low return on investment. They're seeing that they have no analytical rigor in determining the best projects. Additional external risks that have been identified are, of course, the risk associated with the current COVID-19 crisis. We're not able to conduct in-person workshops, so we'll be doing the implementation workshop remotely. Of course, with that, we don't know how long this crisis is going to last, so that's going to add on future restrictions for any travel. Another external risk that has been identified is Kramer Consulting's past dependability, as they've missed several meetings and deadlines up until this point. So I want to stop here to provide a BPC enablement call out. We really want to make sure that business process consultants understand the inputs that need to go into an implementation or process or requirements gathering workshop. There should be an updated but draft project or engagement plan from the EM or PM. That BPC should also be very familiar with the contract or the statement of work. The BPC, if they are a ServiceNow partner, will also want to maximize the materials available in the partner portal. So just a quick overview of what that initiate stage looks like for BPC. You want to make sure you gain that customer context by reviewing any documentation passed to you from the EM or from the sales team. Also do your research, Google the customer, make sure you understand what they do and who they are. You'll also want to work with the project team to gather and put together any of the workshop materials that you'll need to provide to the customer beforehand, as well as the materials that you'll use during the workshop. And so another call out here is that if you are a ServiceNow partner, you should be familiar with the partner portal. However, I've found that a lot of people are not that familiar with it, or they may be a little overwhelmed because there's a lot of information there. So a key call out for finding the materials that'll help you prepare for your implementation workshop. Once you're logged into the partner portal, you simply just want to navigate to tools and resources, collateral, then go to the Partner Success Center, and there you'll be presented with partner delivery materials. Those materials include implementation slide decks, process guide templates, and baseline stories for multiple product lines, as well as additional delivery materials. So with that, we have another poll. We want to gauge how many people in the audience are a partner, a ServiceNow partner. So if you can let us know if you're a ServiceNow partner, a customer, or other, again, that'll give us more insight into who our audience is. All right, so I hope everyone had a chance to answer the question there, and we'll go ahead and move along. One additional call out are the outputs, of course, for the implementation workshop. The EOM or PM will have an updated project plan. The BPC may have updated process guides to provide to the customer. And then a key thing, right, for the implementation workshop is that you have stories. That's what we really want to make sure we have, stories as well as updated diagrams for documenting what their current process is, as well as what the desired to-be process will be. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump right into the mock implementation workshop with Nathan. Thank you, Nathan, for joining the implementations today. I'm glad that you were able to do this remotely with us. Traditionally, we would be looking at a 2-day workshop if we were in person. Since we're doing this remotely, we're going to break it up a little bit. So a
Sure.
quick beep.
Jerry and George aren't here today, just me.
That's fine. Hopefully they'll be able to join tomorrow, but we'll take notes and make sure they get the information they need. So just a real quick call out for BPC enablement is that this is an example of some of the material that you can find in the partner portal. This workshop agenda was pulled directly from some materials for the PPM implementation. So this is what you can expect to see, and then you would just update it for the workshop that you're doing.
Great.
So Nathan, now that we have you today, before we jump right into the process, we want to make sure we understand the goals of Vandelay Industry for implementing the ServiceNow project portfolio management application.
Okay.
Yeah, so can you talk a little bit about the goals that you guys have for this effort?
Yes, I mean, essentially, we have legacy systems that we're trying to retire. We're trying to modernize the way we do things because everything is pretty manual. I mean, we love our spreadsheets and access databases. No, we don't. We're trying to move away from spreadsheets and access databases and so forth. So the way that we handle our kind of demand and projects and portfolio management is very manual at this time. There's no analytics involved. For instance, during our review boards or portfolio review boards, we don't really use metrics. We use Delphi Group, which we kind of get all the experts in one room and get their opinion or their scores, right? But there's no analytics. So we definitely want to implement a robust project and portfolio management system that will enable us to create the most profitable portfolio of IT projects that we take on, and not only that, but we need to move away from our manual way of doing demands because it takes too long. It's very inefficient. And we don't really have a strong presence on the internet. So, we'd like to create some good portals as well. So.
Okay, great. I appreciate you reiterating those goals for us here today. So with that, I've captured some high-level requirements. Of course, during the sales process, we identified there's a 3-month timeline for the initial phase of PPM. With that, we'll also need to extract the existing data that you have from like your Microsoft projects, as well as any spreadsheets. So we'll be working with
Yeah.
Premier Consulting for that piece of the requirement.
We'll need to finish. We'll need to finish by November because we have end of life, constraint on some of our legacy apps. So December is out of the question. We have to finish before that.
Right, I can totally understand your concern with that. What will help us meet that aggressive timeline is by sticking to the baseline ServiceNow PPM application. That's essentially sticking with a lot of the out-of-box functionality. So we'll definitely keep that constraint in mind.
Okay.
We've also identified, of course, that you want to implement the idea and demand portfolio management capabilities and get that idea portal set up.
Yes.
Does that accurately reflect your high-level requirements?
Yes, it does. I mean, that's requirement 3 and 4 are key projects that we'd like to implement right away because, right now it's spreadsheets. So we need to hop on that.
Right. Well, that's wonderful. The ServiceNow capabilities directly align with the goals and objectives of Vandelay Industries. So we're really happy and glad that we're going to be able to help make you guys more successful by streamlining these processes. So with that, we would like to go ahead and document and review your artifacts for your current process. Do you have the current idea and demand process documented?
No, but I can tell you what it is. But before we go there, I'd like to conduct a quick poll.
All right.
Yes, so we'd like to find out who among the audience, essentially starts a whiteboard session to capture as is and to be processes. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's really interesting for us too. We see a lot that we get really heads down on just the requirements, but as Nathan pointed out earlier, a picture's worth 1,000 words. If you're in person in a workshop, it's really easy to maybe get like some sticky notes and just use those and use it on a window or a whiteboard, and then you can easily move the sticky notes around as you're discussing the process. With doing it virtually, there's lots of tools out there available for us to use. Lucidchart is one of my favorites. They do have a free version with limitations. Zoom, if you're familiar with the Zoom conferencing tool, which we're using today, it actually has whiteboard capabilities. And we've pointed out a few other pretty popular tools available to you. Along with the tools available for whiteboarding, there are also different techniques for business process modeling. Lots of people are familiar with flowcharts for like documenting their organizational structures. There's also the BPMN, which we've recently started looking at. Really the key though, during the workshop, it's not to like make sure that you're sticking to the standard of the business process modeling notation. It's really to capture the high level processes and what those activities are that generate any outputs that would be also inputs to additional processes that may be related. So that's
right.
just a quick.
The cost of making a design change here at this stage is far less than making the design change before go live. So, because you're essentially just changing a box or a diamond or an arrow at this stage.
And that's why it's so important to have these workshops, right, Nathan? So that we can get through those issues as early in the process as possible. Even though we do adopt a Agile Scrum methodology for our projects, we all know that you want to try to identify that minimum viable project as early as possible to make the client successful, especially in this case where they want to shorten the timeline.
Yep. So
all right.
I'm ready to move on.
All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to stop sharing the slides and we're going to jump over to Lucidchart. So Nathan, what we're going to do today is I want to go ahead, since you don't have the process currently documented, we're just going to go ahead and talk through it. So first I want to ask, how many different people are actually involved in the idea and demand process?
Well, I mean, just off the top of my head, maybe, 3 groups. So we have our employees, right? They're one group. And then we have a demand review board that takes a look at what's incoming in terms of new projects and so forth. And then we have a PMO group that sets up the projects and sets up the portfolios. So that's what I can tell you just off the top of my head. Yeah.
Awesome. So what I've done is I've created 3 swim lanes. That way we can clearly identify who is doing what and when.
Okay.
So I'm going to assume that the employees initiate this process by submitting an idea. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, it's essentially a suggestion box. And believe it or not, I mean, we use it for all our suggestions, whether they're internal, improvements to our work environments, or they're actual IT projects, or new software systems that someone's interested in procuring. So everything is submitted as an email. It goes into this, central distribution box, which is monitored by a person called the idea manager.
Okay.
And they just essentially, it's a manual effort. They monitor the distro box, and each week they compile a report, and they kind of segregate the internal ideas from the external ideas, and that's kind of how it's been done for as long as we've been around. So.
Okay, so I've gone ahead and added an additional lane here to identify that the idea manager, they review these ideas that get emailed. So after the idea manager reviews it, what happens with the idea at that point?
Right. So they basically determine whether it's an internal facing idea or it's a external one, or IT project where we have to, procure something from an external vendor, right? The internal ones are typically, very low cost, and they're just suggestions on how to improve the workplace or some other thing, similar to that. The other ideas are around, typically they're around different software systems that people want to, adopt. Those are typically what we see for IT projects.
Okay, so if it's external, does that just kind of stop the process right there, or
No.
is this going to a different bucket?
Yeah, it goes to different buckets. So if they're external, if they're IT projects and if they're over $100,000, then that gets pushed over to the demand review board, and they meet.
Okay.
Right. They also meet once a week to take a look at new demands. So anything that's less than 100K, generally we just use the company credit card to purchase that. But if it's a major system like ServiceNow or Oracle, and where we're doing annual licensing and subscriptions, or we need some type of contract in place, then those are flagged as external IT projects.
Okay, gotcha. So for the internal ones, for the demand review board, after they review it, if they decide not to fund it, is the idea just to reject it at that point?
Yes, they reject it at that point. In an email notice is sent back to the originator. If they decide that it deserves to be pushed to the next stage, which is the PMO stage, then those demands are pushed to the PMO.
All right, sounds good. All right, so what I've done here is I've just kind of set up the boxes or the activities of the current process. Nathan, does it look like I've accurately captured the as-is process at a high level?
Yes.
All right. So then what I would do is just go ahead and add the lines to show how the flow goes. And again, during the workshop, you're really just trying to get that high level. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be pretty. With the remote workshop, since we're not going to do a full 8-hour, a full day workshop like we normally would in person, this will give the BPC time to go back that evening and update the process flow so it looks a little bit cleaner. And then, of course, they want to just provide this to the client after the workshop to make sure everyone has a copy of what was diagrammed out. So Nathan, now that I have a good understanding of your goals, your pain points, and what your current process is, I'd like to share with you some of the capabilities of ServiceNow. How does that sound?
You know what? Not quite yet. Can you go back to that flow diagram real quick, Sherry?
Sure.
I forgot to tell you that Kramer Consulting, they're actually part of the demand review process. So after the demand review board meets and provides a yes or no, if it's a yes and it goes to the PMO, before it gets to the PMO, Kramer Consulting, which we hired as our financial auditors, and they do a lot of the financial analysis for us on our projects in our portfolio, investments and so forth. So they would actually provide the final review before it goes to the PMO.
Oh, okay. What I'll do is go ahead and add an additional lane here for Kramer Consulting, and we'll be sure to include that in the as-is process and consider that for the new process as well.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Of course. So we'll go ahead and go back to the slide deck here. We've captured the current state. We'll go ahead and move on to showing you, Nathan, that like I said, we understand your current process, what your pain points are, and we really just want to stress that ServiceNow is going to give you that end-to-end value so that you can see and track that idea from the time it's initiated all the way through the time that it's released to production. So ServiceNow really is that single platform to hold all of your data. And it's also going to help with automating the workflows and making your team more streamlined.
Okay.
So with that, some of the really cool features with the idea portal is that once someone submits an idea, the entire company can vote. And then that way the idea manager will have a good idea of how popular the idea is, and that may go into their consideration for moving that along to the demand review board.
Okay.
With that, there's a collaboration feature, so idea managers would be able to come in, add comments, and just go ahead and discuss in a collaborative way what these ideas are, if there's anything that needs to be added. An additional feature is, let's say the idea manager wants to go ahead and promote this to a demand. All they'll need to do is click a button to create a task. It'll automatically create that demand for you and relate it back to that original idea.
Okay. Now we have, employees all over the world in different time zones. So is there a feature that would allow us to, synchronize across the different time zones, or at least put some type of, a constraint on the voting, in terms of period, the duration or whatever?
Right, we can definitely look at that as a configuration. As I mentioned before, especially with the collapsed timeline for implementing this, we highly recommend sticking with out of box. That way you'll get a chance to use the ServiceNow features as they were built, and you may see that you don't need that change in the future, but that is definitely something we can configure for you. So we'll add it as a backlog item, a backlog in the story log.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Another thing that's going to help you guys, because I know one of your pain points was duplicate ideas. There's a feature here that as a person is entering an idea, if there are existing ideas that are similar, it'll show them that, and then that way they can decide whether or not they really need to submit that. And it'll also help your idea managers with managing the number of ideas that come in.
That's really going to help us because our idea manager has to do that manually right now. So.
Right. So how about I show you how some of this stuff works in real time?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Once you're logged into your ServiceNow instance, all you'll need to do is start typing IDEA in the left-hand navigation, and you'll see the option for the IDEA portal. Once there, the IDEA manager and anyone else in the company will be able to see all of the ideas. They can filter by state or category. They can also vote up and down to show their interest in an idea. If I'm the idea manager, if I click on an idea and open in platform, I'll have additional functionality. For instance, creating that demand task.
Okay.
And we can see the demand was created successfully. Great. Do you have any additional questions on the in-platform functionality for the idea portal?
Is it possible to create additional categories? Because I saw that there was a field called categories.
For sure. We'll make sure we document that in a story for you. And we'll give you a list of the existing ideas so that you don't create any ones you don't need. And that way you can see what's already there. And we'll work with your product owners to identify any additional categories. But yes, that's an easy configuration that we suggest making so that the categories make sense to Vandalay Industries.
Great. Well, okay.
All right, great. We'll go back over to our slide deck. All right, so now that we've shown you what ServiceNow can do, I'll just show you a quick overview of what the desired state process will look like.
Okay.
So here, it may look a bit more complicated than your existing process, but remember that we're going to have lots of automated notifications and a streamlined workflow. So with the out-of-box ServiceNow idea and management flow, that user will submit that idea through the idea portal. The idea manager will actually get an email notification to let them know there's a new idea to review. A neat feature is that in case the idea manager needs additional information, they can just update the state of the idea and that user will be notified and it'll just go back to the idea manager once it's updated again.
Great.
We can check for duplicates at the beginning, but just in case someone, still tries to get one in, the idea manager will also be able to identify if it's a duplicate. And then of course, create that demand in the backlog.
Will I be able to generate management reports, of my demands or duplicates or?
Definitely. So out of box, there are no reports for ideas, but you do have the idea portal to be able to gauge what's in the queue, but we can definitely create some reports. So we'll get that added to the story backlog as well.
Okay.
For demand and project and the other PPM applications, there are lots of out-of-box reports that you can use. And once you have a chance to actually use those in real time, we can definitely make adjustments in the future for your team.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course, Nathan. Also for the demand review board, they'll now get a notification to let them know which demands are up for review. They can decide if it's something they're unlikely to implement, or they can go ahead and work with the PMO to get that project created. Then of course, the idea still remains, that project will close out, and once the project is completed, the idea will be closed as well.
Okay.
All right. So Nathan, with that said, are there any additional configurations that you see Vandalay Industries needing for the idea and demand management portions of the project?
No, I really like what you've done here. Just, of course, add the Kramer Consulting into the review process later, but I agree with this. For
sure. We have that in our notes, and this evening we'll go back and update the diagrams and get those back to you for your final review and approval. You're welcome. All right. So at this point, we're at the end of the day. This is really for a BPC enablement call out. You really want to make sure you're capturing stories throughout the implementation workshop. Of course, if you're the one presenting, use your team for backup. The EM and TC should be helping you keep notes and making sure you guys have a good story backlog once you come out of the implementation workshop. Of course, after the workshops are complete, that means the prepare stage is complete. And then you're going into the create stage. With that, the BPC still has more work to do. Sometimes that BPC may be playing multiple roles. So you may be helping to collect the requirements and working with the customer, but you may be very involved with the development team as well, acting as that Scrum Master. You may also be helping with quality control testing, unit testing throughout the development cycle, as well as helping the customer prepare and conduct user acceptance testing. With that, of course, after the create stage, you go into the transition stage, and that's where the actual UAT and any knowledge transfers will occur. For ServiceNow partners, remember that partner portal has a lot of great information for you. If you're not familiar with this ServiceNow implementation methodology and you are a ServiceNow partner, if you access the knowledge base, you can just search for SILM, and there are materials out there to show you each workflow for each SIM stage. So with that, that's the end of our mock implementation workshop, and we have some time for Q&A.
Awesome. Let's dive into some of these questions. So it looks like there's one that says, how long is a typical requirements workshop?
Well, let me, you want me to take this one, Sherry?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it really depends, on the modules that you're implementing. But in the old days, there was the rule of thumb was you would need at least 1 day, per application module, assuming that you were going to be on site for 8 hours. But if you're doing it virtually, like, we pretty much have to do that right now, then you may want to break it up a little bit across multiple days. But again, yeah, it's, as an example, if you're implementing ITSM and there's 6, 7 application modules, you're not going to be able to squeeze all of that in 1 day. So each application really deserves its own 1 to 2 days workshop. And if you're breaking it out, because of virtual, then you may need to spread it out over 3 days, just for a single application. You want to add to that, Sherry?
Now, I think you hit the nail right on the head. And then remember to, it really is just to get the high level. So there may be times where you've kind of closed out that prepare stage and you're in the create stage, but you're still talking process with the customer, especially for larger engagements that may be a program with several projects under it. So there may be additional time to hold additional workshops throughout the engagement.
Right. And by the way, if you download the ServiceNow collateral from the partner portal, some of their collateral is really incredibly, outstanding, but they have a lot of slides. So, you're not forced to talk to every slide. You need to tailor your presentation deck, your requirements, presentation to your audience and, and their schedules, right? So, some of these collateral decks from ServiceNow may be 60, 80, 100 slides. And so you really need to tailor that for your audience and what their objectives are and which application they're implementing. So,
right.
Awesome. Great advice. Well, it looks like that is all the questions that came in today. So I'd like to move on and announce the winner of our $50 Visa gift card. And it looks like the winner is Stephanie Sutherland. Congratulations. We'll email your prize to you directly. Congrats, Stephanie.
congrats.
But don't worry if you didn't win today. Don't be discouraged. Every on-air webinar that you attend for both Pharicode and our sister company GlideFast counts as an entry into our on-air grand prize giveaway of a mirror workout, which is a $1,500 value. We're going to be selecting the winner for that at the end of this month. I'd like to tell everyone thank you for joining today, and we really hope you enjoyed the session. Feel free to reach out to Sherry or Nate. It's their first last name at Pharicode.com with any questions that you have, or reach out to us at info@Pharicode.com. And to see more sessions, just visit our website, and there's a whole page with a bunch of webinars coming up. Thanks, everyone.